Here to tell you about the incredible power of why is Mr. Allan Hirsch.
Thank you, sir. Is that up there? The same way Patrick started, I too work with a lot of business. We do the same thing in many ways. We're business coaches. I don't consider ourselves really consultants. And I use the definition, a consultant comes in the way he described it. That comes in, does a report, tells you what to do, and walks out. And you haven't learned a thing. What we do as coaches is help you learn how to do it for yourself. And that's something I think is very important, a very big differentiator between the two of them, which I think you'll hear from us today as we go through the process. But what I want to do is talk about, in the first part, why we do what we do. How many in the room have ever seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk called Start With Why, or read his book? Well, you're way ahead of a lot of people. 10 years ago, he came up with the concept that great leaders understand why they do what they do. And I'm going to go into some detail about it. I have been trained and certified by an organization that believes not only great leaders do, but every one of us does. And it's done tens of thousands of research, and I'll go through that. But as you can see on the screen, and I sometimes ask just the first part about that. Mark Twain said the two most important days are the day you're born, and I sometimes ask, which I asked someone up there, is what's the second most important day in your life? So I think he used when I got married, when I had the first child. But Mark Twain said it's when you find out why. Think about that. And his response was to me, it usually happens when you're a senior and you're older, like me, and yes, I found out mine in my 60s. My why. I probably knew it because of the way I behaved and acted, but it's very important that we understand why we do. It's a motivator that really, if we understand it, can drive us and change us. So what is a why? It's what you do. It's a natural law. If you think about gravity, where you hold a rock over your head, if you let go, you know you're going to get hit in the head and hurt. But the why is, in fact, a natural law. Every one of us has a why. The organization called Know Your Why, and now the Why Institute has studied tens of thousands of people around the world. Every one of them has a why, and we're going to talk about them. But what is a why? The why is why you do what you do. It's your cause. How you're hardwired. What makes you special. How you think. What you believe. What people can count on you for. Your purpose. What you're compulsive about. And the reason you get up in the morning. Interesting enough, that last one, I don't know if anybody, they probably saw it, but I do a talk radio show, the only one in Baltimore on business. That is the first question I ask every guest. What motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work? And I get some great answers. The one answer, the one person in almost 4 years that actually says, I do it for the money, and which is not the why when you talk about Simon Sinek, it's not the money. Money is a result of understanding why you do what you do. He's the only one that I followed that in the last 2.5 years since has had 4 different jobs. 4 different jobs. Now, I don't know if it's for the money, more money. He doesn't understand why he does what he does, so he doesn't have a feeling for it, so he's jumping from job to job to find something. But it's very interesting. I apologize. I have this cold, so I'm taking a lot of gestures, water. So if my voice disappears during the presentation, my apologies for today. But I also want to, excuse me. So we look at a why in the same way we look at Wi-Fi, the broadband that's on your phone or on your systems. Simon Sinek talked about starting with why. And if you think about it, and we'll talk about it in a minute, if you start with your why and then you talk about how you do something and then what you do, you're broadening the communication between the people you work with. If you start, you walk up to somebody and I don't think we've met. We have. What do you do? If I was networking with you, what do you do? Mindset coach? Okay. What do you know about her? Do you know anything about her? What? Okay. 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 But you don't really know about her. But if she turned that around, as we'll talk about as we go through this, the biggest, and for me in my 60s, to change the way I introduce myself has been a challenge because I've been brought up and you introduce yourself and they say, what do you do? And I want to say, I'm an executive coach, talk radio show host. It doesn't tell them anything about me. It doesn't broadcast to them who I am, why I do what I do, how I do it, and what I do. And what Simon Sinek discovered when he showed this to one of his friends who happened to be a neurologist or a neurosurgeon is that he used this golden circle. That when you start with why in the middle and the how and the what, and you go from the outside in, it's the same thing way our brain works, the physiology of our brain. The outside of our brain, the neocortex, is the part of a brain that is rational, analytical, and the thought. It's how we communicate. Think about that. It's how we communicate. Yet, the limbic part of the brain is the emotional part of the brain. If you think about it, almost 90% of all our decisions are made in the limbic part of the brain, the limbic system. They're emotional decisions. It doesn't know how to communicate. It's automatic. How often has someone in here made a decision that says, because it feels right, or my gut, I know it's right? How many of you have made a decision that way? Okay? That's your limbic brain telling you what to do. Now, if you understood why your limbic brain is doing it, what your why is, you could understand that. And think about this. How often do you make decisions because it feels right, then use the neocortex, and the rational brain to justify the decision? We do all the analytics, but it's only really to justify the emotional decision. And I'll put it in the reverse. How many of us don't make a decision because of an emotional feeling? Called fear. Right? We don't make it because we fear. And I use use it, false expectations appearing real. It's because we're fearful of the unknown and we get paralyzed from the emotion. So think about that when you make some decision making as well. But if you know why you do what you do, and why you make some of these decisions, and why you behave the way you do, you can change the way you work. So let's talk about knowing your why. Believe it or not, there are only 9 whys. 7 billion people in the world, there are 9 whys. After studying tens of thousands of individuals, there are 9 whys. The first one is to contribute. To contribute to a greater cause, make a difference, add value, and have an impact on other people. Believe it or not, that's my why. People who've known me for years know. I mean, I just volunteered last night to do something I don't have time to do. But it's about helping people and making a difference. I did another task force to study education last night. I have to kill myself now that I said yes. But that's my why, because I'm always there. I've been involved in nonprofits my entire life. When I was in business, it was about making sure my employees were taken care of, because I cared about their lives. Their lives were more important. And had successes that way. And I talk about some of the stories of how people use their whys as we go further in this to run their business and transform their businesses. The second one is trust, to create trusting relationships based on trust. We all talk we need to trust each other. But there are people whose entire lives revolve around trust. I have a woman that was in the financial industry who had a networking event I was at. I don't know if Jim was there or not that day. But she said she was miserable in her job. And she wanted to change her career, maybe videographer or something else. And I said to her after the event, sit down with me for an hour. And she did. I went through the process, discovered her why, which was about trust. And you should have seen that aha moment. The moment when she realized, my God, I don't trust my boss. She was in a total cloud of fog, and we'll talk about that. She finally realized that her world revolves around trusting people. She was miserable in her job, not because it wasn't the career, but it was around everything she needed to be trust. She didn't trust her boss. She got a job at another financial company, still in the financial world. She's 2 years later, is happy as a lark. She works for the company where she trusts the people she works with. Making sense, to make sense out of things, especially complex or complicated. A better way. And as I go through these, think about people you've had meetings with and how they talk about things. Let's make sense of this. Let's find a better way to do this. They'll use this and not know they're using this is their why. The right way. Think about someone who's a right way and someone else happens to be a better way. You think they're going to clash? They do. But if they understand each other and they can communicate around it, they can deal with it and they can help each other. To challenge the status quo, to think differently. Anybody know a company that entirely is built on the why of the owner, that uses the term think different? Anybody here? That's all their ads. Apple Computer. And we'll talk about that. A master. I've not found one, but a master is someone that if they don't know the answer, they'll find it very quickly, and they think they're the expert in everything. Then there's someone who's a clarifier. You have anybody who ever sits there and tries to continually explain and re-explain something? He wants to make sure you are perfectly clear. It's not about making sense out of it for themselves, but it's about making sure you are perfectly clear on what they're trying to say. And then finally, a person who does nothing but simplify things. Please, any questions at any time, please ask them. Yes. I'm the first one, making a difference. I truly believe in making a difference in people's lives. And I truly believe if I improve one life, I improve their world and everybody around them. And there's some stories, if we get to some stories as we go, I can talk about some of the businesses. But I want to talk about, as we go through this, talk about the why, Allan, what, and how it then, of the individual, and how it then translates into business. But thank you, yes. I'm not an expert in any of those. I've taken many of them. But they don't tell you why you do what you do. They tell you how and what you do, how you behave. And it's very difficult to change your behavior if you don't know why. Think about that. All of these are about change, about how and what you do. The whole thing that Simon Sinek recognizes is that we have this natural law in our limbic system that dictates why we do, which then tells us how and what to do. And that's why I think this is better than any of those. And we'll get to how to use this in teamwork and how to use this in the building. Yes, Alice? No. But you can use, okay? Okay? I didn't. There's some people that sometimes think I'm a right way, but that's another story. Particularly on board meetings when I can get Robert's Rules of Order straight. I had a person that I worked with that identified who thought that was her why. Her why was to clarify. You could see it when you talked to her that she was a clarifying person. But how she did it, one of the things how she did it was to help people make a difference in people's lives. You can, for example, my short introduction, when I say short introduction, is, hi, I'm Allan Hirsch. I believe in making a difference in people's lives. I work primarily with CEOs and business owners, building their trust and confidence and helping them find a better way to run their businesses in order to achieve their personal and professional goals. I'm an executive coach. I've used in that one 15-second introduction, I've told you why I do what I do, very briefly how, using two of the other whys that maybe connect with you, and then what I do. It's totally reverse of what we are trained to do. And you all of a sudden you know why I do what I do, who I am. So the other whys become part of how you do something, how you do it. And that's what the next slide is. We have clarity and we are unique. And what makes us unique is the why is why you do what you do. How is how you do it. And we all do it differently. We'll talk about that soon. And then what you do. It's your job. And you can have a why message, which is the why, how, and what, for both your professional career and your personal life if you want one. Whether it's working nonprofits. You know, if I were to, at a meeting of some nonprofits, I might introduce myself at the end as the president and executive director of the Hebrew Free Burial Social Service Society of Maryland. But I'm helping people. I'm helping families. Making a difference. So, we talked about the why a little bit. Now, the how. What is the how? The how is, how do you let the world know what your why is? So, for example, if it was, and we'll use thinking differently or challenging the status quo, how do you let the world know that you challenge the status quo? How do you actually let people know that? You challenge the status quo, if that's your why. So what is the process you go through to show it? And what are the ways that you show you do it? If you can answer these questions, and these are actually part of the process that I go through, that I've been trained to go through to help you discover your why. Some of the questions I ask. But think about these as how you do what you do. So you can create your own personal brand. The way I use that very short 15-second, I've got a longer one. I have a 30-second, which is a commercial in my radio show that I use. And then you pull it together. Again, the personalized how, the why, how, and what. And with 7 billion people, what makes us different is you might have the same why, you have a different how, and you certainly have a different what. Any questions before I move on? Well, when you do that, you really understand yourself. And things make sense. Like the woman that I helped who was in the financial industry. She didn't understand herself. Once she understood why she did things, she gained clarity and confidence in what she did. She knew who she was. She was in her 50s before someone really sat down with her and helped her understand what made her tick. And then you know how you fit in. And when you know this about other people, I still haven't done my wife's why, but that's another story. You can fit in. You understand where you fit in as an individual. And then, the what. So when you have your why, your why is when what you do is in line with your why, and you do what you do, and how you want to express it, you will have passion. And passion is the fuel that drives the energy to pursue your dreams. Think about that. You really don't know your why and your passion. And I'm going to run a clip in a minute. But people ask me all the time, what are the two most important things you need to have, an entrepreneur should have? Anybody want to answer them? Okay. Well, I use the term passion and a dream. This is Steve Jobs and his two, in his short.
People say you right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work. Don't worry. If you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion. And I think that's the high order bit. The second thing is you've got to be a really good talent scout, because no matter how smart you are, you need a team of great people, and you've got to figure out how to size people up fairly quickly, make decisions without knowing people too well, and hire them, and see how you do, and refine your intuition, and be able to help build an organization that can eventually just build itself, because you need great people around you.
Thank you. Liz.
So that's Steve Jobs' thought on the two most important things you need to run a business, or to start a business, or be in business. And the first one is really about, if you understand your why, how, and what, you can really have some passion in life and build on that. And we talked about how you do it based on why you do what you do. But there's another part of how you do something that each of us needs to understand. And I'm going to go on that. It's really off a tangent, but I really believe in this. And that there are really three hows that we need to talk about for each of us. One is our individual how we do what we do, which I've already talked about a little bit. The second is how we lead, which I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes, because I think it's very important, particularly in business, that we understand what makes great leaders. And the interesting thing about this, it doesn't have to be just the owner. It should be everybody down to the bottom of the floor. If you think about lean manufacturing, anybody here know what lean means, lean manufacturing? Part of that is you allow the guy at the bottom of the totem pole to make a decision. So what are the great characteristics of leadership? And I'm going to talk about them because I think they're in what we do with small business owners and working with them. So often they don't understand this, and until they really do, they really can't take that next step. It's part of that trap that Patrick was talking about, because they don't understand what it is to be a leader, and yet it's something we all, it's parenting. It's the whole thing about leadership. So the first one is modeling the way, setting the example. I use this little thing. Business has a policy, the owner has a policy that emails and telephone calls should be returned within 24 hours. And they sit on his desk for 2 weeks. What happens to the rest of the employees? They sit on their desk for 2 weeks too. As a parent, how many here are parents? Okay? You tell your child to do something, you do the opposite. What are they going to do? Unless you beat them. I'm being serious. They're going to do what you do. They're not going to do what they tell you, what you tell them to do. Same thing as individuals. If you're dealing with people that aren't in your family, you have to set the example and model the way for them. Inspire a shared vision. What's the vision? We talk about passion, and we'll talk about this later again when we talk about business. But what is your vision? Where do you want to go? As a leader, if you don't have a vision, where are you going? You have this passion for something, but where does it lead you? And if you're the only one that knows it, how does that help the other people do their job? Or work with you to get there? Challenge the process. Even if your why isn't challenging the status quo, as a leader, you should allow everyone to challenge the process. A business that doesn't change and improve goes backwards. So what you're doing now, as Patrick said earlier, might not be good next week or the week after. And what you did last week might not be good next week. So you have to be constantly challenging the process. And to do that, you have to enable others to act. Let them challenge it too. Let them understand your vision. They might have a vision that'll challenge yours. And as Steve Jobs basically said, you have to hire smart people. And I believe in hiring people smarter than you in the areas that you don't have the expertise. I'm a firm believer that leadership is not about a natural law like the why, but can be learned. That someone can take these 5 characteristics and learn to be a great leader. And it helps to understand their why, because between their why and how they do things naturally, and these leadership characteristics, they can build culture in a team that'll be second to none. And the last one is encouraging people, encouraging the heart. Thanking people. I don't know how many have ever seen the studies that are done on why people enjoy what they expect from their job and why they like their job. What do you think's number 1? What? What was that in the back? Okay. Where's money fit? What? Near the bottom. Most recent international study had it 13th. People want to be respected. They want to be thanked. They want to be allowed you to trust them. They want to be treated fairly. They want to be allowed to do their job, not micromanaged. All of these kinds of things. That these 5 things in great leadership allow you to do is how you lead. And I would suggest as a business leader, if you can learn these, understand your why, your personal how, your leadership skills. Whoops. Always pushing the wrong button. Get it myself. That from a personal point of view, you can take the next step as a leader in your business. And that's what I want to go into at this point. Any questions before I go to the next step? You all understand it. You all understand your why. Okay. Please interrupt with questions at any time. This part is, now we've talked about the personal why. So the personal why, particularly in the business, goes to the business why, or the whyification of the business. And I want to start with the business why. Successful businesses have one why. The why of the founder or current leader. Think about that. Think about Apple. And I use that because it's a classic case of why, of their marketing. And I'll use it again in a few minutes. They built their entire marketing around Steve Jobs' why. His brand, which was thinking differently, challenging the status quo. They built their entire company brand around him. His personal brand became the brand of the company. And Simon Sinek realized people buy your why, not your what. I have a company, a client, a sign manufacturer in Baltimore City. In his business 36 years. 33 of them, I would say, was closer to a hobby than a business. Came to me in his 50s, realizing he never put anything away for his retirement. He said, should I go to work for some? He has this tremendous passion. His why is about building trust. So the first thing we did in this business is create that why message. And we'll talk about, and I'll show you what Steve Jobs did and what Apple does. And I'll finish let me tell his story after I do this and play this.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
They launched the iPhone 8 last month, I guess it was. People were in line to buy it. Did they need a new phone? How many of them needed a new phone? No, they wanted it. They wanted it. And they paid $1,000 for it when you can go in, you listen to all the other ads of the phone, personal data, whatever they call it, the PDAs. You can go to the other ones and they get 2 for 1, right? And they're selling it on price, number of pixels. Anybody know how many pixels the iPhone 8 has? What? That's right. You're not buying what they do. You're buying why they do it. So that's what I did helping this sign company. In 3 years, by changing his message, by using the trust as tagline, a supplier you can trust, he will come close to tripling his business in 3 years and growing his gross margin from 40% to 60%. Nothing else has changed. His marketing has changed, and the way he treats his client is differently. Because he honors the trusting commitment that he guarantees that he will deliver. It's a price. This is your price. If I screw up, that's my fault. Unless you change the specs, that's your price. You're going to get delivery. If there's a problem, you're going to know about it. I'm going to take care of it. And he delivers. His customers are now calling him and saying, I need this. I want this for this. What do you suggest? And when can I have it? And how much? A year ago, he had a customer that called for a $17,000 sign. And I don't know if you know, that's an expensive sign in the sign business. And they said, but I need it in 10 days. He told the customer, I won't deliver it in 10 days. You won't get it for 3 weeks. In his old business, same business, but 3 years ago, he would have said, I'll have it. And he would have lost the customer because he wouldn't have delivered. He told the customer, no, I can't deliver it. If you want it in the 10 days, you need to find somebody else. I can deliver it in 21 days. 13 days later, he got a call from the customer saying, not only didn't they deliver it on time, they have no idea what we want. When can you have it? That customer has yet to get a competitive quote from anybody since. Because they're buying his why, the trust. He told them the truth, he honored it, and he delivered it when he said. That's how he did it. Now, the hows we'll talk about, but you have to deliver on the how. Because if you don't, the why doesn't matter. So the business why dictates the company along with how you execute that, and that's why we talked about the leadership in there. Helps dictate the company culture. It permeates the marketing, who the customers are, the product development, and human resources. And I also want to point out something that Simon Sinek points out, that customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. Think about that. Anybody know how Sam Walton grew his business? He'd probably be turning in his grave knowing how the heirs and the business is being run today. But when he started and grew the business in his old pickup truck, he'd drive around the country and visit every store every year. He didn't go into the business office often. He went around the store and talked to the employees. He wanted to know about their lives. He'd go back to headquarters, and he'd make a difference for the ones that needed something. Because he believed that if his employees loved the company, customers would. There's a company, and there's now 2 companies, because I told this story to one of them about a year ago, and they added it. There's a company that I went into about 2 years ago in Hunt Valley, and I walked in, and the name, I forget the woman's name, but her job title was the Director of First Impressions. Think about that. I now have a client that I work with who's now done that for their receptionist. But because and there's a smile on her face. You have think about the times you've talked to people on the phone. Do you know when they're smiling and happy and when they're not? Do you want your employees talking to customers who aren't happy? You don't. So your culture has to be one of allowing your employees and building the culture around your why and your hows and your leadership skills in order to allow your employees to love what you're doing. I had a client in the government contracting world. Anybody's been there, he provided butts in seats is the term. He had people in NSA in Fort Meade. He was a subcontractor. He had 6 employees there. The general contract was up for rebid. His customer, his contractor, lost the job. Normal situation, his employees would go to the other contractor, and he'd lose the 6 employees. But he believed in making a difference in customers' lives, in employees' lives. His entire reason was being in business was to do that. He found that all of the major government contractors, most of them, treated their employees as if they were a widget, not as people. So when that happened, not one of the 6 would go to the other company. They told NSA, we're not working for anybody else. He'll find us a job somewhere else. We're not working for anybody else. 3.5 months later, NSA told the new contractor, you must hire this firm because we need those 6 critical people. If your employees don't love the company, why will the customers? And when you do all that, you build a winning team. And now I want to talk a little bit, and you think about it, when you have a team that also understands why you do what you do, and each one of the team members, if you think about you understanding the why of each team member, their personal whys, it can be an amazing opportunity. One person asked with me his why was making sense, and he said, "Well, that should mean if that's the why of the company, shouldn't everybody in the company have the same why?" What do you think? Well, you have it right. You're the only one shaking your head, but you're right. No. It's not a team. You're all going to think the same. You're all going to do the same, similar ways. You want somebody there that if you're an IT company and writing software, to simplify the directions, to help you find the better way, to have someone that can challenge the status quo and think outside the box. And you want the people in the right seats. So if you do your job right as a business owner, not only do you want to know your why, you want to know the whys of your team leadership. And so that, and I've done that with a couple of my employees in the clients, in the change in the way they manage, and they change where they put people in the responsibilities, and it makes the employees happy. And if you know the book, Good to Great, it's getting the right people in the bus in the right seat. When you know their whys and you know how they do things, you can do that. And you build that winning team. So let's talk about the business how a little bit. We talked about the why. Excuse me. Any questions so far, please? I don't talk this much. My radio show, I don't talk this much. I'm always asking the questions, not speaking. Although we had a great time last Tuesday night. If anybody wants to listen to it, it's up on my website. He was on the show last week. Yes? I sit down with them and I try to ask the kinds of questions that will invoke their neocortex to think about the limbic system. It's only about 85% accurate. I've come out of those and saying I have no idea what your why is. It depends on how open and simple. It's about being simple and not overthinking it, and really sitting down. It takes about a half an hour to 40 minutes to sit down. And anybody that's here that would like to have me discover their why, I think there are a couple people I've done Jimmy's, would like me to, I'll be glad to do it because you've been here, so give me a call. I love doing it. It's fun. Like I said, with the one woman, it changes their whole outlook. I have another client that was making sense. Once he made sense out of something, he would never follow through on the work. One of those frustrating clients, you've had those? Because once he made sense out of it, he was happy. Doing the follow-through didn't make sense to him. Put a pun in it. So he was a guy, he was doing government contracting in the Homeland Security, U.S. Customs. He's letting that run. He's changing his whole business. He's becoming a consultant in for those who know government, ISO certification. His company was ISO certified. He loved that. So he's changed his whole business. One of the key players is now an auditor. And he's going to become a consultant working with businesses to help them comply with the ISO. He's going to help the companies make sense out of ISO for them that they have to execute. He's not going to execute it. He's going to help them make sense. He will be a happy camper in changing his business because he's using his why. And that's what he has a passion for. Yes? You want to say? Oh, I saw that. Okay? Talking about the how. The only time Apple really hasn't used this product, iPad 3, when it launched, it was the single, and it still is, I believe, the single largest product launch in history. The first weekend, they sold over $2 billion, that's a B, $billion worth of product. Think about that. And the ad started, and I'll read it. We believe technology is at its best when it's invisible, when you're only conscious of what you are doing, not the device you are doing it on. It doesn't say a darn thing about what it does. That's why people buy Apple. It's how they do it. They make a device that people don't have to worry about. All they have to do is worry what you're doing. Yeah, the other phones or other tablets might do more things, might do them better. But they can be more complicated, and you have to worry about what you're doing it on and how to do it. And their whole point is, we make it simple so you don't have to worry all that stuff. Just $2 billion in the first weekend. That was how they started their ads. They did this. The only people that ever say what Apple products, what they do, are Verizon and AT&T when they sell them. You never see an Apple commercial saying a single thing about what they do. So here's another company. Most of you know it in this area. It's the largest U.S. airline carrier in the country now. Herb Keller, never be satisfied with the status quo. So what did he do? Tell me how they do what they do by challenging the status quo. Anybody? This I'm going to open up and ask. Anybody? Go ahead. Okay. Okay. Alice? Okay, what else? What? Right. What else they do? Right. What else they do?
There's a long list that we're giving to all of which come under the heading of
Okay? Okay. But yes, which is all challenging the status quo. They only have one aircraft. You know, the other airlines have 4, 5, 6, 8, 17, whatever it is. They have one. They have one plane. So if one doesn't work, they don't have to worry about reconfiguring the seating. They were the first ones to serve no meals. How they do it is they simplified it down to the basics. Okay? That's how they've done it. And look at their ads today. It's transparency. It's how we do it. We're fair and we're transparent about our fares. That's a how. That's not what they are. They're an airline. Right. That's how they, you know. Yeah, their most recent ads they're talking about the people. Right. They challenge the entire, and it's interesting. Very few other airlines have accomplished what they've done and challenged it the way they have. Yes. That's right. Absolutely. 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 Oh, absolutely. 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 I understand that. But they adapted. They challenged the status quo when they had the opportunity to. None of the others did. They've struggled to make money for the last 30 years. Southwest made money, I think, every year. No. No. Absolutely correct. It goes back to the structure, why they're in business, and then how they've done it, and what they are as an airline. So your business how is the way you do what you do. Your proprietary process, the things you do that make you different. And when you do that, you create a unified culture, as we talked about before. You add that with the personal, how you do things, and everybody understands it within the business and carries it out and acts on it. It unifies it. And everyone is pulling in the same direction. And then the business, what, is really simple. It's what you do. What's the business you're in? The sign company I talked about, going back a minute to their how, is we help you develop the sign you want, not what you think you need. That's one of the taglines he uses. One of how he does things. You walk into 99% of the sign stores and say, I want this sign. They say, fine, it'll cost you $150. First time I was in his office, or second time, a customer walked in with a sign. You know, I'd like 2 of these. How much is it? He says, well, what do you want it for? Totally different. And that really adds to the how. And then the business what is what you do, the business you're in. When you think about Southwest, when you think about that why message that they created. Okay, their why is to challenge the status quo. The how is all the crazy things we talked about. And the what is we're a reliable, low-cost travel company. We're an airline. Here's another company that uses it, Edward Jones. One of the few, if not only, financial firms during the crisis of the Great Recession didn't take money from the government. Recently was rated one of the 5 best companies to work for in the country. Now, I don't know the survey, but they were rated as one of the top 5 companies to work for. All of their ads start with making sense of investing. Every one of them starts with why they do what they do. Their how is easy to reach financial advisors. 10,000 branch offices in neighborhoods, not high-rises. Long-term approach to keep your financial, your investing on track. Easy to understand investment strategies. Investment solutions created to help meet your needs. We're a decidedly different kind of investment firm. Go into airline magazines, that's their ad. Up front, their why message. They're growing, they're successful, and they have happy employees. Beyond the what, and we talked about it a little bit, when you have a passion, you need a dream and a vision. So when you take beyond that, you need to understand what's the vision. And I've got the slide in here again, I apologize. The next slide. What's the vision? What's your dream? What are you trying to do with the company? Think about that, because you need to share it as a leader. Where do you want to be? So passion is really meaningless without a vision. I'll just show you a couple of vision examples. Starbucks provide a third place between work and home. Google is to provide access to the world's information in one click. Salesforce is the end of software, although I would suggest that it's not necessarily the best software in the world, but that's another story. But that's their vision. I don't know if they've achieved it yet. And one of the things I do with my clients in my group sessions is I ask them to rate their business, their personal and professional, their business, professional, and health, 1 to 10, and what their goals are. I've never seen a 10. And I'll never put a 10 up. Because you always need a goal. You always need a vision to achieve. There's always should be something out there to strive for. It doesn't mean some businesses, and if you wanted a lifestyle business, it might not mean growing at 10% a year or 20% a year. But you need to have a dream of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then you need to understand who your customers are. Who are your customers? Who are you going to market to? Because all of this ties in creating that tremendous broadband of information and knowledge to get to your customers. So what's their profile, the demographics of your customers? Is it a B2C? Is it a B2B? Where are they? Are you limited geographically? All of those kinds of things. What's the age group you're trying to go after? I'm not going to ask the question, but you need to understand all of these to create a full message of marketing message through the entire why. And finally, what do they want? And as we talked about a little earlier, wants and needs. What's more important? Anybody? A want or a need? Who? Someone said it? A want? Yeah. We all have needs. But people buy an iPhone, the next iPhone, not because they need one. They have a phone. They want it. So you want them, you want to understand not only who they are, but what they want. So you communicate that and deliver that. And all of that then becomes about communicating these messages and your messages. And that's, to me, this is the first part of, and as Simon Sinek calls, his book's called Start With Why. To really build and take your business to the next level, or start one, if you start with this understanding, you have a long way, you can do a lot. And I'm going to turn it over to, what's your name anyway? Patrick. Why don't we take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break? 10-minute break? 10-minute break, and I'll be here. You have questions in the break. And then Patrick's going to present. I didn't realize it would take that long. Patrick's going to present, and then we'll have a lot of questions and answers at the end. So thank you.